This bastion was run by the Weavers Guild.
This is one of the most important fortifications that has survived, fairly intact. And in terms of its architecture and form, it's extremely important in understanding the defensive systems of the early 15th century.
A multi-leveled wooden gallery was built onto the inside of the wall.
What we see here is very, very high-quality work in oak. And we have the roofs at the moment are covered in snow, but underneath that snow is timber roofing.
Cut into the outside walls are arrow slits and loopholes. They would later be used for cannon and muskets. The Saxons believe that they are safe behind their mighty fortifications, but they underestimate Dracula's cunning. Dracula grew up in a Saxon town. He knows their way of fighting. He knows a frontal assault is doomed to failure. So he takes Brasov by surprise, attacking by night and ransacking its suburbs before people can retreat to safety behind the walls. Everyone he catches is impaled on the surrounding hills. According to later Saxon accounts, thousands die.
The execution took place on the hanging hill, which is behind this mountain.
The attack on Brasov inspires the most infamous of all the images of Vlad, the Forest of the Impaled. It depicts the prince eating his dinner amid corpses. Some suggest this picture is the first to make a link between Vlad Dracula and vampirism.
Impalement is a slow process. It can't be done quickly, especially with large numbers. Then he would have been having a meal while he was watching it. But he's not actually drinking their blood, and he's not eating their flesh. There is nothing cannibalistic, I don't think, about Vlad.
Created by Saxon storytellers, the purpose of these pictures is clear: to forever associate the name of Dracula with evil.
The woodcuts themselves, of course, are propaganda. They are the early version of video nasties, and people wanted to look at them and gawp, and they paid good money to do it.
With Brasov subdued, Vlad turns his attention to the Ottoman Empire. The Muslim superpower of his day, its vast borders reach Vlad's own territory.
The Ottoman Turkish Empire were continuing to look westward, look towards Europe as the next place they were going to conquer. And aside from a few hill tribes like the Wallachians, there was nothing to stop them.
But Vlad Dracula is determined to resist. He begins to concentrate his building efforts in the south of his realm. Here, he erects a stunning new palace of brick and stone. For 5 centuries, it has been lost to time, until now. Hidden beneath Bucharest's streets is the secret world of this once great residence. These ancient walls conceal evidence of past glories few even know existed.
We're always thinking of, Vlad as defending and fighting, but don't forget, he was a man with a great deal of commercial nous, and this was an extremely important economic route.
Vlad knew the Turks could threaten these trade routes, and at any moment. He built his palace in a hurry, with the best specialists available.
He called in Transylvanian stonemasons. He also called in approximately 1,000 workers to make sure that this was erected, and this was erected quite quickly.
Excavations in these tunnels reveal a building of a compact design, born out of urgent necessity.
Altogether, it was a functional fortress as opposed to a sort of exotic palace.
Later rulers would rebuild and extend it, but hidden in the building's foundations are clues to its history.
Take this piece of wall here. You have in the middle brickwork that dates back to Vlad's time. Now, on either side of that, you see brickwork that's been added on at later dates. And I think that's what's the sort of most fascinating part, if you like, because you have archaeological evidence from the 14th century, also the 15th century, the 16th century, the 17th century, the 18th century, and the 19th century.
Now, with animation based on this archaeological detective work, Dracula's original palace can be seen once more. It is a commanding fortress, and it would have served as an essential bulwark to Vlad's southern frontier. Dracula now has his domain of Wallachia in an iron grip, but his greatest enemy, the conquering Ottoman Empire, is waiting at the border. The bloodthirsty tyrant Dracula now needs to transform himself into the heroic defender of Christian Europe. And the fortifications he's built will now be tested to their limits. With his country secured by a series of fortified palaces, Vlad Dracula, Prince of Wallachia, begins planning for war. Amid the massive 5-foot-thick walls of his palace at Târgovista, Vlad receives a delegation from the Ottoman Turks. The Turks' all-conquering armies have reached his borders, and they now threaten Christian Europe. According to legend, the envoy demands Vlad pay a tribute, but he refuses, claiming the envoy had insulted him.
They don't remove their turbans. And Vlad asked them why they were being so insulting, and they said it's not our custom. We never remove our turbans. So he ordered then that they could never remove their turbans because they were to be nailed to their heads.
By the winter of 1461, Dracula and the Turks are at war. With an unexpected speed and boldness, Dracula leads his soldiers on a brilliant campaign into enemy territory. Everyone who gets in his way is put to the sword.
A nobleman like Vlad could not hang back in battle. He had to be physically courageous, otherwise he was nobody.
Vlad returns to the safety of Târgovista's fortifications. In 1462, he writes to neighboring kingdoms, demanding help from his fellow Christians. With one dispatch, he sends a demonstration of his military prowess. 23,884 severed noses cut from the faces of his fallen enemies. The Turkish Sultan Mehmet, himself a ferocious general, sets out to meet him in battle. He brings an army that dwarfs Vlad's by 3-1. Though Târgovista has formidable defenses, Vlad knows the palace cannot withstand a protracted siege.
The way you broke down defensive positions like this was either intrigue, where you paid someone to let you in, open the door, or you starved them out. They're a good answer if all you're worried about is someone knocking on your door for a few weeks. If you have to hide here for 3 years, it's not quite so good.
Vlad is forced to change his tactics and go on the run.
Mehmet was a master of psychological warfare. But what he encountered was an even more powerful psychological warrior.